Hey, greetings, Mike. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. My name is Phil. Work with a few stations here in the Midwest. I think you probably chatted with some of our folks.
Very cool.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking time. Want to be mindful of your time. If you've got 15 or so ish minutes, does that sound about good
Sure.
to you?
Yeah, it's fine.
Cool. Mike, I just like to kind of get right into it, podcast style. But I've been excited to talk to you this whole time so much because it's put me in like this really cool nostalgic place. And I've been revisiting that first album, but you were the second concert that I ever saw in my life, all the way back in 1999 in a small town in Wisconsin. And I think you guys were playing with Seven Dust and Power Man
5,000.
5000.
That makes sense. I remember that tour. Yeah.
Does this ring a bell? Yeah, like what do you remember from those days, man? Because I know my experience, and that was my
Sure.
second show getting away from my parents.
All
Like,
right on. How
like
old
what
were
a
you?
I would have been probably in ninth grade, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So
So
this was one of those like
14-ish.
ages. Yeah. What do you remember from those days?
Uh, so our first tour, so I think that was the third tour we ever did. So our first tour was with Kid Rock and his Devil Without a Cause. I think it went gold on that tour with him. So it was like he is just starting at that point. Uh, and that was great. And then we did like 3 weeks with Monster Magnet, which was weird because their audience was not really our audience. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
they came
Like
from
this
a different
country.
place at that time, but they
It
had that hit.
was. And then we went out with Seven Dust, who we were always fans of, and we had played a couple shows with, right after we got signed, and love those guys to this day. I mean, I just still great friends with them. Love the band, and yeah, I talk to Clint all the time, and yeah, so it was just a great tour. That one was a lot of fun.
And that was what it was for a young kid to see that, like, right, those are those formative kind of moments. And I think I had won those tickets from a radio station, right, which I think set me on a path. And I went, holy crap, I can't do what that guy's doing. but but it was definitely a moment, and I'm always so curious. As a musician, as someone that's done this a long time, you must have some of those moments in your life where, like, when you picked up a guitar first, or was it the music in your house? Were your parents musical? I mean, what
No,
do you remember a time when something just like hit you like a bolt of lightning, man?
my whole life, I don't remember a time when it hadn't. I mean, they have pictures of me at like 2 years old with a guitar. you
Yeah.
know um and something I always wanted to do. My uncle, my dad's brother, was like kind of a singer songwriter, and I was always really drawn to that. And my parents would listen to, I mean, this was in early 70s. I'm old. So it was the James Taylor, Jim Croce, Harry
Oh
Chapin,
man,
folk music kind of thing. And I was always really drawn to that, and I played acoustic. I think I started taking lessons around when I was 6 years old. So I've been playing since then.
that's wild that you say James Taylor. That was in my house growing up. That was my dad's bag. Cat Stevens,
Yeah,
James Taylor,
same thing.
Dan Fogelberg.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So that put me on a path. And I do remember, though, like, finding my own music after that, right? And kind of doing
Yeah.
that thing. And obviously the music that you've been making all these years, there was a point in time where you found that heavy, man. Do you remember what some of those bands you were listening to that brought you into that next space?
Led Zeppelin, probably, you know what I mean, but there's been so many, Van Halen. Those were my two, when I was, in that, junior high school. And then, Pantera was a big one, when I,
Yeah.
first heard that. Um,
I just saw those guys a couple of weeks ago too, and that was one of my bucket lists because Pantera is one of those bands that everyone remembers the first time, and you go, "Wow, this is like holy crap! Something is different in the world."
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Amazing. And I haven't had the, pleasure to see the newly reformed, but I'm looking forward to it. So, um but yeah, so that, there was definitely a transition. Got some, friends along the way in school kind of turned me on to some other stuff. And that's where really that, I mean, I don't think I got an electric guitar till I can tell you exactly. It's so funny because actually sitting right here is the receipt for my first electric guitar from June 5th, 1982.
Oh wow.
Somehow my parents found, and they framed and gave it to me. And yeah, it was a Fender Bullet guitar. with a little Fender Vibro Champ amp.
That's nuts, man. That's a cool little keepsake too. I don't know if you noticed too, the background.
Yeah.
I keep my office space just like I kept my teenage bedroom, man. I mean, it looks just like this with all the things you've collected along the way. I don't know. Do you pack a lot of that stuff? Are you the one in the band that keeps all the stained?
You know, I do keep some of it. I used to be better. Well, listen, actually, we haven't done anything in, over 10 years. This is
Sure.
nice. So,
Yeah.
I think that was probably part of it as well. But yeah, I did. I did do some of that stuff. And it's funny, we have a closet in our basement, this large closet, and these plastic bins that are just filled with stuff. And I don't know, for some reason, my son was bored and he decided, I was on tour. This was in 2021. He went, I remember my wife got so mad. He's like, he's tearing the closet apart. I don't know why. He just went down there and he found this bin with like all these old shirts from like festivals that we played. And
Yeah.
like, I used to kind of keep like some stained merch, and all of a sudden he's wearing all of them. You know what I mean? He like dug through and started pulling all these things out. So it was kind of funny.
Well, it's back, man. I mean, it's taken a turn, and it was, it's interesting. I know you come from the East Coast, and I'd probably read something not long ago talking about your early days, and I had about a dozen friends that were just at a show in Milwaukee a couple of nights ago with you
Yeah.
guys, and you guys are, here you are again, 25 years later, playing a show with Godsmack, a band that you started with. Like, was this couldn't have been the master plan in your brain back in 1996, 7, 8? I mean, what is that mind blowing to you that here you are and the demand is still there?
Sure. Yeah. It's great. It's funny. And Aaron's kind of been mentioning it, on stage, this is a band that before either of us were signed used to play shows together, trading shows in, Massachusetts. And, here we are, playing these amphitheaters, almost 30 years later together,
Yeah, it's wild. It's not supposed to happen that way. I mean, it doesn't usually happen that way, that you and some great close friends and some brothers are
yeah,
finding success, this many years later and still resonating in the same way you were, you know what I mean? And I think that's a testament to, when I think about Stained, I try to pick and find like, where were these guys? What was the influence? Where were you listening to? And I find that, new metal's got this thing people called grunge, the Seattle, whatever it was. And I find Stained exists in this really great middle space that it was vulnerable, but it was really melodic. And I think that's what you bring to that, the lyrics that come from Aaron, but it's
sure.
those melodies and that little bit of heavy that I always find that you guys kind of carved your own space, that I think some people have been able to be very open since then. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I don't know. I mean, listen, it's nice to hear it. I listen. I do think Aaron does a fantastic job with the melodies and the lyrics that he writes, and I think that's a huge part of what we are, is that people really relate to what he sings. And I mean, I think he's one of the best singers out there. I mean, the guy is just, it's an unbelievable voice.
Right.
It's one of my favorites, and I remember, the first time I ever heard him sing. And I know, like, in hearing, spending so many years with him and just hearing him say he was so happy that when Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam came out, it was like, oh, I can sing this, because all those 80 guys that were doing the high pitched, I mean, that's not his voice. You know what I mean? So I know it was a great transition musically for him and what he does in his voice. And I mean, he obviously does it so well. So
And I think maybe, some of the lasting power of Stained is the relatability, is that vulnerability
yeah,
in the music that you put out there. And I don't think that happens, as well without bands, that Alice in Chains transitioning even to a John Davis and Korn, that kind of
yeah,
put it out
amazing.
there, and the
Yeah.
Deftones kind of lead us into it. And, that stuck. I still remember the first time, right in that pocket, hearing Just Go, or I think I saw it on MTV. It was the nostalgia I got in the last couple of days, just kind of thinking about, chatting with you, was I remember where I was when I heard that. I remember the
Right
sound
on.
being that bridge that I was looking for, that went from that space into like what's going to come next. Like, we're going into the 2000s. And I remember being there. I was at a house party. We were probably just, trashing this place when my buddy's parents were out of town, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and I think it's I don't know, there was something moody and there was something relatable to that music right out of the gate that kind of filled that space. And I think that's what Stained has always done really well.
Well, thank you. And you mentioned though, I mean, I think yeah, Jonathan and Corn was a big part of that. I think you know what I mean. That first record, and it's funny because
Yeah.
when we started in Western Mass, if you wanted to play, clubs on a Friday night and not play to a bartender, you had to play covers, and that's what we the first thing we ever did was wrote 3 songs together. The first rehearsal, and we're like, okay, this is great. There's a chemistry here. This feels good. I thought the music was what we were doing was really cool, but we wanted to play out, and so we ended up learning a bunch of covers. And there was a lot of that first Corn record that was played by our band.
That's wild too. That's, I mean, that's almost dangerous territory, right? You're like, where's this going to put me? And I think about, obviously it's been a while was a big time, when that song dropped very well, kind of, one of the standout tracks, and one of those songs that still, when you play it today with these crowds that are still absolutely there, can you feel that from them, and do you feel all
Sure.
that from the space? Because I know when I hear that song, I go back to driving my car because I had just gotten dumped by my girlfriend in 10th grade. Like that's my
Right.
teary eye, like
Right.
heartbreak
Yeah, 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 yeah.
song that just
Right.
spoke. Like,
Right.
is it a lot to carry all of that all these years going like that? Like half of this crowd out there is like putting that on me.
Yeah, I'm listen. I'm just thankful that we have songs and moments like that. You know what I mean? And the setup to that was, Aaron's version of Outside that from the Family Values tour. I mean, that really led into, that song and that record. And I think really just giving the band, a much, bigger audience,
That was the match that lit the whole thing, and then it was a rocket ship ride, I think, after that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, for sure. I definitely. And I remember back in those times and like, there was other songs like For You on that record. And, you know, it's like, oh, we just had a slow song. We can't put another slow song. You want to be, I listen, I'm a metal guy. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
And listen, and I told you I played acoustic for many years before I even owned an electric, but and I love that part of it too. But it was like, oh, and listen, in hindsight, obviously, it was I was wrong. You know what I mean? It was the
Sure.
absolute right move to put that song out, when we did.
Sure, but you guys still got your metal moments, man. I was telling you, I was watching some videos just from Milwaukee a couple of days ago, and then going all the way back and remember what I saw. Like, first of all, like, is your neck and back okay? And how, like, dude, how do you channel, and like your energy is still right there where it was. You still seem as excited to get into it in 2023 as back in 1999. Is that the way you feel?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's just being able to get out there and play and play those songs again is good. And yeah, there's some certain days where a little sore, but I was back then too. It's no different. I am much older these days, however. Don't know how long it can last, but yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's hard not to do that sometimes, you know what I mean, with the crowd and what we're doing.
So real quick, then getting into where we're at right now, of course, we're getting ready for a new album, Confessions of the Fallen. It's been the first time, obviously in quite a long time. You've spoken a lot about it. And I think, with your first couple of singles, I know I'm excited to hear it. I hear all the classic Stain things, but there does seem to be kind of a fresh, invigorated sound. Perhaps that was due to taking some time away and people pursuing what they do, which a lot of bands don't survive that or don't do well with that. But you guys seem to be in a really good space, or at least based on your view of it with this new album.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and like I said, I'm just happy. I'm happy we're working again. I'm really proud of the record. I think real happy with the way the songs turned out, and I do think it's more of a modern sound. There's one thing that Aaron wanted to explore is a little bit of the electronic element, and I think that some of the songs have that, and we were able to accomplish that in a way that it's still Stained. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm just really happy with the way that it turned out.
Did you think it was going to happen? If you're looking back to 2016, 17, and then a pandemic hit us, did you
Right.
think that this was going to, and then of course, Aaron, finding a very different audience
For
and
sure.
a lot of success
Yeah.
doing what he does, which, if you look back 20 years and you said, that the singer from Stained is going to go do this, you go, that's crazy. And did you think that that was going to be the end of the band?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think I always, we always through the whole thing, we would always talk, and I, I always thought we'd get back together and do something. There's never really any plans, for that to happen. And then, I mean, honestly, there's a gentleman that kind of really helped pull the whole thing together, and it's Ben Kitterman. He used to play with Aaron. Came out and saw me, and he said, "Hey, I think you guys should really, work again. Aaron's ready to do it." And I was like, yeah, I mean, count me in. You know what I mean? So we did those shows in 2019. We had a whole plan for 2020. We had signed a record deal to do a record. And then, like you said, that pandemic hit, and you know, really obviously changed the course for everybody of their path and what they were doing and how it was gonna, how things were gonna go down. But we did that tour with Korn in 21, and a lot of what's on the record really came together on that tour. And it was an opportunity to get into a room with Aaron and play him. I had a lot of music written, and play it for him and kind of get an idea of what he liked, and take some suggestions and some direction, and went back and kind of redid a bunch of those demos. We got a producer, and yeah, just started working.
So obviously, it's been going pretty well. Was there ever a minute though, when you thought to yourself, it's been a while since you put the Stained suit on, it's been a while since you kind of been back home? Did you ever think for a second, like, oh man, dude, does anybody care? Are people going to show back up? Are they still going to come? Does that live in
Sure.
your brain at all times? Or
um I knew some people would show up. It's to what level will they show up? That's really, you know what I mean? That's really, to what level is this going to be able to work, so, and I mean, we're still figuring that out, I think. I mean, I
yeah.
think we're still out there, and we're finally back out playing again. This tour is good, and we have some more shows when the tour ends. And next year is, shaping up to have a handful of shows or a couple of tours, to help support the record. So, we're just going to keep working and continue to see where it ends up.
Well, I think so far, I mean, you're finding success. Just in my small circle, everybody has been really, really pumped.
Oh, cool.
The
That's nice
music's
to hear.
doing what? Yeah, the music's doing well. It's as if you didn't skip a beat. I mean, it's almost like, does it feel like you're back home for a while doing the
It's
thing?
it's really nice to, yeah. I mean, and honestly, when we finished the record, I was just really proud of what it is. So I'm, excited for people to be able to hear it, and it's nice to be able to be out there and playing these songs again. And the crowds have been great. And the tour this summer with Godsmack's been great. The reception's been great. So, hopefully we can continue.
Well, I appreciate your time, man. We are all excited, and it is great to have Stained back in the world, feeling that sound. Confessions of the Fall and the new album will be out soon. Mike Mushok, I really appreciate your time, man, and we wish you the best on the road and the best with the new album, and we're excited about it.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate your support, and it was really nice speaking with you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.